So good evening and welcome. And we're now approaching the summer months of Torah study, where it is actually possibly even more important to engage in a routine of Torah study, because it says in the summer we tend to allow the animal soul a little bit more luxury, a little bit more relaxation, a little bit more enjoying the pleasures of life, which nothing's wrong with the pleasures of life, but if they're allowed to be unrestrained and not in the right boundaries, it can lead us to making poor choices. So the Torah in summer especially is there just to be our guide, to help us go through, and it's based on a teaching that is in the Talmud that says one of the ways to avoid sinning is if we're too busy to sin. Like if you actually just get busy with something, I didn't have time to go on my phone, I didn't have time to do anything that was illicit or anything that was wrong. But that's something that when we have more time on our hands, we suddenly find ourselves maybe getting stuck in it. I actually dealing with a young man who was having some addiction with gambling. And it's been going on for some time, but one of the methods that I've tried to help him with is by keeping busy at the times that he does usually have a tendency to fall victim to it, which is in the evenings. So I said, you got to keep your evenings very, very full, and I'll be on you with that, meaning I'll engage you in some things and I'll contact you, and that way you just won't have that sitting here doing nothing on the couch. Yeah, what's the big deal? One time I'll throw a bet on something. And that's one of the things also with Shabbos, by the way. And Shabbos afternoon can be really long. And then you start getting in your head and like, does it really matter if I enjoy a little bit here, a little bit there, something that's not exactly Shabbos-dik, not exactly in the spirit of Shabbos? And it's only because you didn't fill your time slot with, and part of that filling could be taking a nap. It could be playing a game. It could be, doing something that you prepared before, reading a good book. But you've created the framework where there's less problems for there to be a stumbling block. And that's actually one of the commandments in the Torah, not this week's parsha, but in the commandment it says, don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. And what does that mean? Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. It could also mean literally. But it means is when there's somebody who doesn't really see where they're going, you shouldn't be the one to facilitate that they can easily go the wrong path. Your job is to help facilitate when someone's not sure where they're going, make a left turn. That's the way back to the city. Not go right. You'll engage in some fun adventures that way. No, that's don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Means when there's someone who doesn't have a clear path, don't make it easy for them to stumble and make the wrong choices. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. So let us begin tonight, Torah portion of Behaalosecha, with the teaching of the first paragraph, which is a really, it's a select teaching, but it's a very, very powerful idea in Judaism, and probably one of the most important when it comes to the idea of Hasidic teachings. And this is what it says. God spoke to Moshe saying, tell your brother Aaron not to feel bad that he wasn't part of all of the gifts that were given for the temple. There was a whole tribal procession where every tribe brought gifts to the temple on the dedication day. And they were made a big deal about it. Oh, we have a home for God. It's like when we have a new shul, there'll be a day where everyone can come and say, this is what I want to contribute. This is what I want to bring. This is how I want to celebrate. Maybe someone will get the first time coming to a class, and it'll be like their special moment. First time coming to shul. So everyone had their way of expressing the excitement of being in this new synagogue, first synagogue ever in Jewish history. First temple, small, it was a portable, but it didn't matter. It was the first home for Hashem. So Aaron, according to the commentaries in Rashi and others, say, I think he must have been feeling bad. Hey, how are you? He must have been feeling bad because all the tribes brought something, but Aaron and his sons, as the Kohanim, they didn't bring. They didn't bring a special offering, and maybe he was feeling a little bit bad. So if you take a look at Rashi, well, you can't see it's in the Hebrew, but Chal Shadaita, it says he was a little bit depressed. a little bit depressed that everyone else is doing a special opening day celebration, and I'm missed out. And he's the brother of Aaron. Now remember, he's probably got a little bit of feeling that, Moses, my younger brother, has really been in charge of everything. He got this thing built. I know I was given a job to run the service, but I want to do something special on this opening day. So Moshe calls him based on the instruction of God and says, your job is the most special job, Aaron, and that is to light the menorah. And you're going to be the first one to bring light into this building for the first time. Now, we have a menorah on Hanukkah, but if you follow basic Jewish history, that was because the menorah that we had in the temple was desecrated by the Greeks and it was destroyed. And so what ended up happening, they were desperate to rekindle the menorah, desperate to start the service in the temple again, because it was a daily mitzvah to light the menorah. But they couldn't find any oil, and the oil needed to be purest olive oil, as we mentioned in Parashat Terumah. It needed to be from the perfect virgin olive oil, as untouched by anything that's impure. And then it could be used to light the menorah. And in the story of Hanukkah, they couldn't find one. Finally, they found one, but it would only last for one day. And it takes 8 days to go to Modin, where the olive groves were, to be able to get the pristine olives ready and made to be brought back to the Beit HaMikdash. And that meant 7 days they wouldn't have a menorah burning again. And every day they didn't have a menorah burning was like a yearning that they were missing something vital in the very essence of what this temple represents. The temple doesn't represent so much the idea of, we need to study Torah here. The idea didn't represent that we need to pray here, because there was very little prayer in the temple. There's a lot of sacrifices and offerings, but not so much prayer. There wasn't even that much as far as, you could say, kindness to a fellow Jew, tzedakah. The tzedakah was all over the city of Jerusalem, and you'd give it to many different organizations, many different people, and the Levites and the Kohanim. But in the temple was specifically giving to Hashem. But there was one thing that was the cornerstone and the very essence of what the temple represented, and that is, from this place, the center of our country, the headquarters of our people, the mission is to bring light to the world. And Aaron said, this is the act that as the Kohen Gadol, I'm going to do. I'm going to light the menorah, and it will symbolize the idea of light spreading from here to the rest of the world. So that became a very important idea, which is why by Hanukkah they were so desperate to light it, because they said, we're not even a people if we're not bringing light to everybody. We're not creating that warmth and that ambiance of goodness. By the way, if you know this, but you do know it, but so much of what we do in Judaism is lighting candles. It's really amazing. And people ask me this sometimes, like, what is really so special about lighting these candles all the time? For a Jewish woman to light candles on Friday night, all right, we have lights on, thank you very much. I don't need the extra light. Why is that such a big mitzvah, so special, when there's someone who we're remembering that's passed away, a yahrzeit, or during the Shiva, or Yizkor, we light a yahrzeit candle. What is that? Why do we have to remember that in that way? Just put a picture of them. Keep them by saying their name. What's the candle so important for? And then on Hanukkah, obviously, we light the candles for the window outside for the world to see. And then on every holiday, we're lighting the candles at the beginning of every holiday. And then in the shuls, in the synagogues, they're always lighting candles at the start of the prayer services. Havdalah, we're lighting more candles to take the candles at the end of Shabbat to the rest of the week. What's the deal with these candles? So many candles everywhere. We go to the graveside, we light a candle. Come into, any experience where we're celebrating something in a Jewish way, on a special way, we're lighting a candle for it. And the answer is, because the very essence of the service of the temple began and was highlighted by this theme. Our job is to bring light. That's our job. But it's even a little bit more than that. And let's look inside to see what a little bit more is. Behaalosecha es haneros. Aaron, your job is to kindle, lift up, from the word aliyah, which means to elevate the candles, the flames. El mul panei ha-menorah. It's on the face of the menorah. Ya'iru shivas haneros. 7 candles representing 7 days of the week. Vayas Cain Aaron amul panei hamenorah, and Aaron did this. He faced the menorah. Behaalosecha, he lit it exactly as Moses commanded. And this is the menorah, by the way, that was made. Zeh Maseh HaMenorah, Miksha Zahav, was made out of one solid piece of gold. Ad Yerechad Pircha Mikshahi, it was from the top to the bottom, was all solid gold. And this is what the candles and the flames were shining from, as Moses had commanded. Finally, the real enactment of what the Mishkan was supposed to be had begun. So,
in here where it says candelabrum, it's talking about
the menorah, it's called a candelabrum.
3
and 3 with 1 in the middle. People ask me, why don't we have those menorahs anymore? Why do we only have the 8-branch menorah with the 9th branch for the shamash? What do you think? What's the reason we seem to add an extra branch, maybe even 2? That's right. The menorah for Hanukkah is to remember the 8-day miracle of having the candles last for 8 days. But it's not to replicate the 7-branch menorah that we had in the temple. That we're not allowed to do unless we have a Beit HaMikdash again. So if we have a Beit HaMikdash again, then we can light that 7-branch menorah. That becomes the representation of giving light to the world. It was actually a window in King Solomon's temple, just to really be sort of more emblematic of what the menorah stood for. There was a window that was alongside the menorah that had a very small opening, and it went wider. So basically it was done scientifically, that would take the light of the menorah and spread it, project it to a much larger space. So at night, it looked like there was a really big light coming from the temple, because that was really just a trick that was coming from the menorah itself. But that was done specifically to show that's what it means to represent. So for us, the lighting the menorah is a remembrance of the miracle. But everything we do today, whether it's Shabbos, end of Shabbos, holidays, Yizkor, Yartzites, is all to remind us our mission is to create more light, and especially when somebody's passed away. Why? Because if they represented the light that testified to God's existence in this world, which was like a candle, every neshama, every soul is like a candle, bringing light to the world, doing acts of goodness, being kind. No, when someone's really a good neshama, you can say they walk into a room and say they lit up the room. That's the light we're talking about. We're not talking about, someone who's shining, actual light. It's the behavior, it's the way they act. And so when that person is gone, that person leaves this world, there's darkness. There's now a void of that light. So what becomes the job? The job of the children to say, I'm not only going to continue to shine my light, but I'm going to shine the light also on behalf of my loved one, of my father or my mother, to make sure that their light is continuing and it's shining still through me, that I'm allowing that light to continue to be burning. So the lighting of the candle is just there to remind us of our mission of saying, my father or mother may be gone, but I have the job to sort of take their place in being a witness for God and being a light to the world. And so that's why we take on a mitzvah and we say an extra prayer. All of those things is saying more than I did before. I'm adding the light that they were missing, that they're missing in this world. Good evening. Good to see you. No worries at all. It's good to see that you made it. So, what does Behaalosecha mean to raise up, to elevate? So the Rebbe once explained to Mr. Yehuda Avner, who was a diplomat and really an advisor to many prime ministers of Israel, a really special individual and a good Jew. And he explained once to Yehuda Avner, he said, the wax is the body. The wax of a candle is like the body, and the wick is like the soul. Okay? The Torah, or God's mitzvahs, is the flame that ignites the soul and is able to then use the wax, which is the body's strength, to be able to shine this light as far as it can. And so he was explaining this to say that this is the mission of every single Jew, is to try to connect flames with wicks, to ignite Behaalosecha, to elevate the candles. That's why he uses that word. Because you actually have to lift up the person to say, you can be a source of light to the world if you are able to connect to the Torah in the best way, in the way that is meaningful to you. So as he left the meeting, he asked the Rebbe, so, did you light my candle? Did you light my candle? And the Rebbe said to him, I gave you the match. I gave you the match. But at the end of the day, every person is the one who has to light their own candle with their connection to Torah and their connection to Judaism, a lot more than possibly someone else doing it for them. So that's the word Behaalosecha, especially to inspire, to lift, to help, give them the match, and then allow them to ignite and become the flame. So really it's just one paragraph, but it became really a symbol of so much of Judaism in representing light. And just so we understand this to ourselves, you don't need to worry about darkness at all when your job is light. You don't have to worry about darkness, getting rid of it, dealing with it, killing darkness, removing darkness. All you have to worry about is, am I lit? Am I bringing light? Am I Behaalosecha? Have I ignited myself and my own candle? Because if I do, then darkness is gone. It disappeared. Darkness doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, for us, and for those who do engage in darkness, for darkness to exist, and for darkness to win, it does have to extinguish light. So darkness is constantly trying to hurt the Jew, and trying to hurt the Torah, and trying to damage the people of Hashem, because that's the only way they can exist. If there's too much light, they don't exist, so I have to get rid of that light to be somebody. For us, we don't have to get rid of anybody. We just have to be. We just have to act and do our mitzvahs and connect to our Torah, and the darkness is gone, which is so frustrating for them and so challenging for us, because it gives us a little bit more of a focus on what we need to do. Yes, there are those that need to fight the battles and defend and go to war and so on. But for us as Jews to win, all we need to do is continuously work on lighting our candles.
I think as Jews, we have a tendency to already be that light. So I think that our job.
Well, they're looking at us. The world is looking at us as if we are a light, but if we're not, and we're something else, they get a bit confused. The world is expecting us to be the light and almost will respect us for that position that we hold. And many people have said that over the generations, over the history, that Thomas Cahill says the greatest gifts that have come to this world have been through the Jews. As Jonathan Sarna points out in The Great Historian, he says, if you look at any great civilization, they say it's Judeo-Christian values, but it's Judeo values. It's from the Torah that has enhanced every moral society with teachings from the Torah, and they know it's come from us. They just want to see us living that way so that we can be a role model to them as to what the best society would be. Why do you think everyone's staring at Israel all day? They're waiting to see whether or not we're going to live up to that Behaalosecha, or we're just going to put some kind of fake show in front of them, and then they're going to be like, get out of here. If you're fake and you're not doing it, what do you even need to be there? Which is something I feel very strongly about. If you are not believing in the mission that Hashem gave us, the land of Israel, and gave us the Torah to spread from there, Ki Mitzion Teitzei Torah, then really you have no right to be in a land that is so contentious and that is, fraught with so many dangers. You're right, like many American Jews say, it's too dangerous. I'm not going there. Yes, set up shop somewhere else, make yourself a peaceful world. If that's what you actually feel, that there is no essence to it, there is no source to it, and you don't have that mission. But if you know you have the mission, this is no different to when somebody says, Rabbi, in Hebrew school, do you mind just toning down a little bit the idea that we are the chosen people. It's very elitist. I actually don't like the way it sounds, and I don't want my kid to feel that they're better than other kids. So I said, first of all, chosen doesn't mean better. Chosen means selected for a job. So if someone's selected for a job to I don't know, to go out to the army, doesn't make them better than the guy who's the accountant somewhere, or the guy who's doing a doctor somewhere, job somewhere. Doesn't make them better. It's just he's selected for that mission. So that's number one. But number two is, I said, I can certainly understand your uncomfortability with being called the chosen people, because, excuse me, if you feel you're not doing anything to earn that title, meaning chosen isn't just chosen for good stuff, it's chosen for responsibility. So if someone tells me, well, you're chosen, I was like, yeah, I'm keeping Shabbos, I'm keeping kosher, I'm living a lifestyle that's much more, in a way, trying to be more refined than a regular person in society. And I'm following as many of these mitzvahs as I can. I better hope that's for some kind of job, some kind of mission. Otherwise, what am I doing it all for? But if you're not doing any of those mitzvahs, yes, you're very uncomfortable with the title chosen, because I don't want to feel like I'm getting something as special or different when I'm really just the same like everybody else. So yeah, I can understand that. So I try to share this idea that chosen is for responsibility, and then yes, there is some privilege and reward that comes with that responsibility. So that is what's the expression? With great something comes with great power comes great responsibility. That if you're going to receive this position, then yeah, you've got to be responsible for it. So that's where the person who might not live by the mission of bringing light, but if the world looks and sees the history of the Jewish people, they'll say, yes, you have succeeded in many ways to bring a lot of light to this world. In very simple assessment of Nobel Prizes over the last 150 years. I mean, it's disproportionate to a point that it's almost embarrassing in a way. But at the same time, not embarrassing if you know that this is the mission of the Jewish people, was to bring goodness, repair, tikkun olam, and all godliness and morals into this world. Then yes, anything that's fixing, anything that's broken or damaged in this world, we're going to be on the front lines. That's Behaalosecha and Eros. But no one's going to do it for you. Aaron had to be able to ignite this on his own, and he had to be the one to elevate the candles through his own work. And by the way, there was a time when every single Jew was allowed to light the menorah on behalf of all the Jews. It wasn't, Aaron had to lead the way, but if a regular Jew who's an Israelite wanted to light the menorah, they were allowed to do so on special occasions. If it was their birthday, if it was another reason, or they wanted to have the opportunity to do it, they would be privileged with lighting the menorah, because it was every Jew's mission to do it. The Kohen Gadol just had to lead the way and do it as a leader. Now, how did they do it? How did they light? They weren't allowed to go in there. It was only allowed for the Kohanim and the priests to be in that section. So how did they do it? Called a very long pole. It was a very long pole and a stick that where the Jews stood from in the Israelite section, they would take this pole and use it to light the menorah from all the way back from where they were standing. And that was their special moment of saying, I'm also part of the igniting the menorah. We're going to jump because there's a few things in this Torah portion that's really special, even though that's sort of like the cornerstone. But there were a few interesting stories. And this story is on page 876. It's the story of the Jews who said to God, we feel bad. We want a second chance. And if we look just a little bit inside, the Israelites, verse number 2, the Israelites offer the Passover sacrifice in its appointed time. This is the first anniversary of Pesach, so this is their second ever Passover, and they bring it up and they celebrate with the Korban Pesach, with the Seder, with the matzah, and then look at verse 6. There were men who had become ritually defiled. They were impure because they had contact with the corpse. And they couldn't offer up the Passover sacrifice on that day. They couldn't celebrate the first, because it says, if you're spiritually impure, you can't have the Passover lamb. You can't offer it up and you can't eat it. So they approached Moses and Aaron after Passover, and they said, we were ritually impure due to contact with a corpse. Why should we be excluded from celebrating Pesach? We want to celebrate Passover too. And we wanted to have a partaking in the lamb. So Moses said to them, which is already the first interesting thing in verse 8, wait, I'll hear what God instructs me concerning you. He didn't have an answer. He said, this wasn't in my manual, wasn't in my handbook. I have to go and check out what God's going to say. Now, here's the crazy thing. There's never, ever been a situation where you get a second opportunity to celebrate something. If you miss Shabbos, you can't do Shabbos on Sunday. If you, let's say, were really exhausted because you landed from an overseas trip on Friday afternoon and you went to take a nap and you woke up and it was Shabbos afternoon, like, sorry, you missed this Shabbos, try again next week. All right? I feel bad, but time is time. You can't recapture time. And there's a statement in the Talmud that says, Avar Zmano Batul Karbano, which means once the time passes, the offering is expired. It's expired. So, for example, let's say you missed Yom Kippur one year. You can't fast 3 days later and say, this is my Yom Kippur. You can do it if it makes you feel good, but there's no way you're earning anything through that. That's why in Judaism we make such a big deal about the times. Like, it can be crazy eating, and an hour later, you're poring over your machzor doing al chet, I've sinned, in Kol Nidre, in the evening prayers. Like, but it's only an hour. And if you'd be sitting there eating at that time, people would be like, what are you doing? It's Yom Kippur. It's like, well, you just were eating an hour ago. Yeah, but that hour changes everything. So Judaism time has extreme value and meaning. That even a minute and an hour could change everything in a situation. So now, here these guys were, and they said, look, we missed Pesach. Can we get a second Pesach? Moshe should have just answered, based on everything that I know from the Torah, I'm sorry, you missed your chance. Unbelievable answer from Hashem. And Hashem says, you know what? I didn't offer this in the first place because I didn't want people thinking they had a second shot at it if they missed the first, because they were whatever, they were on vacation. I wanted them to ask for it. And if they asked for it and they really wanted it and they missed it because of no fault of their own, you get a second chance. What an unbelievable watershed moment this was for all of us as well. How many times in our lives that we grew up a certain way, or we acted in a certain way in our childhood, in our youth, in our earlier years, and then we say, I sort of missed some really, really good opportunities to capture my essence, Jewish life, meaning, purpose in other ways. Do I get a second chance, Hashem? Do I get a second shot at life? Do I get a second shot at godliness, at Judaism, at love, at anything in my life, at raising my kids? I messed them up for the first 20 years, but now, is there a chance I can still repair them now? And Hashem says, if it wasn't because of malicious intent, if it wasn't deliberate, meaning premeditated, that you said, I don't care about it, it was no fault of your own. It's going to actually say at the end, it's not only those who were spiritually impure, it's even those who were too far and they couldn't make it. What does it mean, too far? They were too far away from seeing the truth. They were too far away from seeing how important it was a month ago. And now they wake up and they say, no, it really is important. I'm closer now. Then Moshe is told by God, give them a second chance. Let them try for Passover number 2, a month later. By the way, who were these people? So Rabbi Akiva says they were the two people whose job was to take out the sons of Aaron who had died about a month before. And they died in one of the first actions of the Mishkan, where they went in on the great inauguration day, and they came too close to Hashem. They left the world. So these two people, Mishael and El Safan, their job was to carry out the body and to bury them. So they were still impure from that. And so as a result of them being impure, they missed Pesach. It's actually 14 days earlier that they did that. Then the other opinion says, Rabbi Shimon Levi says, no, it was actually those who were, their job was to carry the coffin of Joseph. Remember? From all the way from Egypt, they were carrying Joseph's coffin to be buried in Israel as they promised him before he died. So these guys were carrying the coffin. It was their turn. It was over Pesach. And they're ritually impure. They couldn't bring the offering. Either way, it was two people or a group of people that really did not do this with intention. So they had this second chance, and Moshe said, God said you're allowed to do it. It's only one of two times that Moshe went and asked God when he wasn't sure. You know when the second time was? Second time was when there was a family with only 5 daughters and no sons, and none of them were married. And Moshe was dividing the land of Israel by the male patriarch of every family. These 5 daughters' father had died. They weren't married, and they had no children and no brothers. They're like, what happened to our family's lot? We don't get a lot because it's not being divided by women, it's being divided by men. We can give a whole class on why that was. But Moshe said, good point, let me ask Hashem. And he went and asked Hashem, and what did Hashem say? In the case where there are only women, absolutely they get the portion in their father's land. They get to have it. So it's the first time women's rights, 3,000 years before feminism or any other kind of women's rights were given. We see clearly the Torah says equal land ownership. The only reason it's given to the man is because his number one responsibility was to provide for his wife and provide for his kids. And so giving him the land meant he's got to go work it now. Go plant the fields, go plow it, and make a living for your family. It's your land. Go do it and take care of your wife and children. But if they don't have a husband, give her a chance. Give her something. Give her a estate. And that's what Moshe did. So those two cases, Moshe said it's not in the Torah. And the reason why it wasn't put in the Torah, because both of them needed to come from the heart. Both of them needed to come from questions that we ask to Hashem. And when we do genuinely ask, Hashem's never going to refuse. Never going to refuse. Because who could refuse when your child says, I want to do this more for you. I want to help you in a better way. And I want to do this because I missed the first chance. Like, he didn't even say that Hashem was upset at them for missing it. It just said they felt upset that they wanted to have that second chance. So there's a Hasidic line in Yiddish that says, Nita kein verfallen. It's never in your life a situation where it's too far gone. Because there'll always be a road back if you want it. If you want it, Hashem will give you that opportunity. That is a massive, massive lesson from Pesach Sheni, from the second Pesach. And look at what it says in the finishing stages, where it says, verse number 9, God spoke to Moses saying, speak to the Israelites saying, he must not leave any of it over till morning. He must not break any of the bones. He must offer in accordance with the rules connected to the Passover sacrifice. But if a man is ritually undefiled and is not on a journey, neglects to offer up the Passover sacrifice, it's too late. Too bad for him. But if he did not bring, but if he dwells amongst you and he missed that first opportunity because of no fault of his own, then he should be able to have that second chance a month later. So Hashem's giving an answer saying, we're not allowing this for everybody, but in a case where we really can't help it, it's there. This was used, by the way, I participated in a Pesach Sheni Seder for somebody who, when COVID came in 2020, was unfortunately very, very ill. He was in hospital and intubated, and no possibility to even know it was Pesach, let alone celebrate Pesach. Thankfully, they recovered. Thankfully, they got better. Now they're after Pesach, and they wait. Can I do a second Pesach? I missed the first one through no fault of my own. The answer was yes. Go make a seder, do a whole thing for Pesach Sheni, because you want it.
They were better in time for.
A month later, it was a little more than that. It was a little more than that, but it was still their Pesach Sheni when they were able to. Yeah.
They are able, even if it's not,
Well, that's the ideal time, because usually it says a month. By then, you could get rid of all of your impurity by going to the red heifer and all the different things, the mikvah that needed to go through the process. And if you were too far away, a month is enough time to come over that distance. Couple other things from this week's Torah portion that's really full of a lot of interesting stories of the Jewish people. Page 884. Let's see some stuff that isn't so good. We just read two beautiful sections about the virtue of the Jewish people, but let's see something that isn't so great. Chapter 11, the bottom of page 885, and this is what happened next as the Jews traveled. The people sought a pretext to try and complain and not be happy with what Hashem was doing for them. And they were a little bit ra in the eyes and the ears of Hashem. They were a little bit evil in Hashem's ears. What were they doing? They were complaining. What were they complaining about? God heard this and became angry. And a fire broke out and consumed them, and people died in this terrible act of Hashem's vengeance on the people for their misbehavior. And what had happened? So now it goes into some of the specifics of what happened. They began to cry, and they said, "We want meat. We want meat." Because how were they eating at that time? How were the Jews eating in the desert? They had this manna from heaven that was like this. We're at verse 5. I was just doing a little bit outside. And this is what they said. They said, "We recall the fish we ate enjoyably in the land of Egypt. And we were free there. And we had cucumbers and watermelons and leeks and onions and garlic. But now," verse 6, "we are bored. There is nothing at all. We have nothing before our eyes but man. That's all we have is just man day and night, day and night." Now, here's what it says about the man, just in case you weren't sure what man is. Now, man was not limited to one taste. It had the taste of anything they wished. It was unlimited and reflected both how it was shaped like coriander seed and by the color of like a crystal. It was white. So you could close your eyes and you could eat this cookie. You say, "I want it to taste like pizza. Pizza. I want it to taste like donuts." And it tastes like donuts. Whatever you want it to taste like. So, and it also was not fattening at all. And not only that, there was no waste. So you never had to go to the bathroom from this. So the Jews should have had nothing to complain about. We're getting this miraculous bread from heaven that teaches us everything about how to live a life filled with faith as well as being sustained physically. And yet they complained, which is why the Torah says they almost looked for a pretext to complain. Why were they complaining? None of this stuff did they really have when they were in Egypt. They didn't have cucumbers and watermelons and leeks and onions and garlics. They certainly didn't have meat. Those are luxury foods. So what are they? They're lying as well. They're saying, when we were in Egypt, we had all this food, and now we don't have anything. We just have this one little cookie. So the truth of the matter is that they didn't have any of these food, and Moses knew it, and they knew it. What were they saying? They were saying that we could have had real food if we wanted to. We could have had real food. Here, all we're forced to eat is this one specific, unique, very basic food. Now it could taste like whatever it wanted, but it just looked like a white cookie. And that has to be our food every day. Another thing, this interesting explanation that the Medrash says, and that's what's actually pointed out in the parentheses there, that these were the only foods that you couldn't ask the man to taste like.
Other than the five.
Right, other than the five mentioned above. So you could ask for pizza and ice cream and beer and steak and chopped liver and herring and kishkas and knishes and kneidlach and kreplach and everything else you wanted to possibly ask for. But you couldn't ask for it to taste like cucumbers, watermelons, leeks, onions, and garlic. Why not? So first of all, they honed in on that. They honed in and said, see, we can't even have these foods. So it's not like they really had them in Egypt. They just said, that's the one thing we're choosing to complain about, what you can't have. This is a classic Complainer's Manual Guidebook 101. You find the few things you don't have, and you hone in on them, and you make that the story. And by the way, it's not only a complaining of deficiencies, it's a complaining about other people and about interesting other things that happen in your life. You know, sometimes we make an event, and we do an event, and it's very nice. 50 people come, 100 people come. It's a beautiful event. It's a party. But there's one little incident that happens. It's like, it's all I think about all night. Like, I ruined my party, ruined the whole thing. And that all the other people had a great time, and everybody enjoyed themselves, and everybody said, thank you, it was so wonderful. But I can't stop thinking about that one thing, and it ruins the whole thing. Now, I've worked on myself, and I don't do that anymore. At least I try not to. Because you realize that this is the complainers of the Jews. This is what they did. They said, we have this amazing bread that can taste like whatever it wants to taste. And what are we choosing to complain about? The 5 things that it couldn't taste like. Now, my question is, aside from emphasizing the illness of someone who has negativity bias and really just wants to complain about everything, and if you want to complain about everything, you don't need everything to complain about. You could find one small thing. And it's childlike a little bit. Children will do that. Children will go on an amazing day. You'll take them to Disney. You'll take them on every ride. You'll buy them these souvenirs that cost $8,000 each. You'll go as late as the park stays open. You'll stay there with them. You'll get the hot dogs, the kosher hot dogs that cost you $500. You'll get everything that you could possibly do. And then you get the kid in pajamas in the car on the way home. What an amazing day. Wasn't that the best day? And they're like, could I have a cookie? You're like, no, we already ate. Now it's time to go to sleep. You don't give me a cookie. This is the worst day of my life. Right? The worst moment. Right? And it's so quick to switch on a dime. Because why? Because that's the immaturity of the complainer. Is chooses to focus on that and make that the story. And that's what they were doing. So here we are, the Torah is teaching us lessons. The Torah is telling us these are children. These are Jewish people in their infancy. The parents is God giving everything to the kids that they need. And they're choosing to find the few things that they don't have. It's so easy for us to find fault in them. But do we fall into the same trap from time to time? And do we only come to Hashem when something's going wrong in our lives? And we don't come to Hashem when everything's going well? And maybe if we did, Hashem would say, okay, you're not a complainer. I see you came to me a lot of times to thank me for good stuff. So you know what? When you do have an issue, I'm actually going to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to that kid that's screaming and yelling all day, because that kid's an immature brat. But you, I'll listen to, because you always comment when things are good. And you say when things are nice and going well. And now you want to say one thing that you need to fix, fine. That's the lesson, obviously, simple lesson. But there's deeper lessons. There's many deeper lessons. For example, why were these five items not allowed to be tasteable, to be part of the palate of the taste of the foods? What's wrong with garlic? All right, there's a lot of things wrong with garlic, right? You want to just make sure you have some alone time. Just eat a couple of cloves of garlic. Be okay for a while. No one will bother you. But the actual thing that says in the Medrash, that it says that these 5 foods would cause a lot of distress to pregnant women. And if pregnant women would smell them or would taste them or would be around them, they would be very negatively affected by it, get very queasy, get very nauseous, be bothered by it. And so out of the consideration for the pregnant women, who there probably weren't that many, probably a couple hundred, and the whole Jewish people, Hashem said, I'm not letting the food turn into those foods because I don't want the pregnant women to be bothered. And again, what we're seeing from here is the way in which Hashem wants to teach us the value of consideration for sometimes what seems to be a minority opinion, but still, if it's no harm to anybody else, aside from the complainers, why not make it something that's very important? There's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch that says, if everybody is hot and one person is cold, close the window if it's cold outside. Because that person will get cold, will get sick, and that's a deficiency for them. You're hot, take off your jacket. Deal with it. You're not going to get sick if you're hot. But that's the point that the Torah is sharing with us. Look out, not for what makes the masses happy, but look out for, are there individuals in this group that are being somehow disadvantaged by the fact that everyone's seeming to get everything they want? And look out for that and see if there's a way you can remedy that situation. Hashem said, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And that's a parent's true story. Because you can have 6 kids that are really happy and one's crying. That's you. You're that sadness. So this is a very important lesson, a side lesson of the power of the individual being taken care of. All right. I've shared this story before, so I'm not going to say it again. So we'll move on to the next thing. Okay. Yeah, you've heard it before, so I'm not going to say it. The next thing is, and this is the last one we'll focus on, even though there's many others in the Torah portion. Let's go to chapter 12, page 892. 892. Yeah. All right. Who wants to read this one for us in English? Because this is an interesting story. You want to go, Jen? Yeah. Okay. Chapter 12. You can go with the internal bits also, because that makes it a bit more interesting.
Okay, so all of them.
Yeah.
All right, so chapter 12, Miriam's challenge. Miriam and Aaron spoke to one another against Moses regarding how he had divorced the woman he had married, Zipporah. There seemed to be no reason for his conduct, for there was nothing about Zipporah that should have occasioned it. But both Zipporah's physical beauty and her righteous deeds were as clearly faultless as the skin of a Cushite, Ethiopian, woman is clearly black. There was certainly no reason to divorce the quote, Cushite woman he had married. Okay. They said, if he is behaving this way because he is a prophet, then has God spoken only to Moses? Has he not spoken to us too? We are also prophets and have not found it necessary to separate from our spouses. And God heard this. Now this man, Moses, was exceedingly humble, more so than any other person on earth. And although Moses did not make a point of it, the truth was that he had been privileged to attain a much higher level of prophecy than either Aaron or Miriam had. God required him to be ready for prophetic communications at any moment and had told him explicitly to separate from his wife.
So, an interesting story. I'll give you the bit more behind the story. So Miriam was a very caring and loving sister to Moshe from the moment he was born. She stood by the Nile River to make sure he was okay. She made sure that he would be fed when he was crying by getting the mother to come back and feed the baby. She made sure that he was always strong enough to be able to go to Pharaoh and gave him faith. And she built up the faith of all the women through all that. And throughout the time in the desert, she was this older, loving sister that would take care of Moshe. Now here, Moshe was married to Tzipporah, but it had been a few years since Moshe had left Egypt, a couple of years now. He's talking to God regularly on a regular basis, face to face with Hashem. And in that situation, he wasn't able to continue to have his marital duties fulfilled. In that, given that level of connection that he was literally talking to God face to face. And so he separated from his wife. Now, there was a story right before this that Moses, because he needed some help, and we know that Jethro, his father-in-law, suggested that he appoints 70 elders to be the ones to assist him. So here's that the inauguration ceremony of the 70 elders, and they actually all had a little bit of prophecy that fell on them from God. And Miriam sitting next to Tzipporah at this inauguration, and she hears Tzipporah saying, "I feel a little bit bad for these 70 elders because there's a good chance that they might not get home to their wives either because of the busy workload that they have and the fact that they are now spiritual and they're prophets and they're connected to Hashem. It might end up like me." So when Miriam heard this, she ran to Aaron. She said, "We got to do something. Aaron, you're the older brother. I'm the older sister. We have to go and talk to Moses about getting back together with Tzipporah." All good intentions, loving sister. But she didn't come straight to Moshe. She went to Aaron. That was Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is when you say something, even if it's helpful, even if it's positive, even if it's in a way that could enhance them, but it's a bad thought or a bad, I guess you'd say, description of the situation or the person, not in front of them, behind their back. And so by doing so, Miriam was immediately struck with tsaras, with the leprosy, for talking Lashon Hara. And Moshe was then defended by God, set aside for the fact that you weren't supposed to talk to Aaron, you're supposed to go directly to Moses. I would have told you that Moses is a very unique individual, unlike any other human being that talks to God face to face. He's just really humble, and he's not saying how great he is to you. Basically, Miriam and Aaron were saying, we're also prophets, and we're able to stay with our husbands and wives. So why wouldn't Moshe be able to? Because God said he's on a different level. And so therefore, God excused his actions, saying that was necessary for Moses. And he's very humble. He's not going to tell you that he's on a higher level than you guys, and he's speaking to me face to face. So at that point, Miriam realized, oops, I shouldn't have probably said that to Aaron. By the way, if this would be us, we'd get leprosy like every other hour. Like, how many times are we trying to help somebody by going to somebody else and saying, what can we do for this person, right? It's like, it's not even Lashon Hara to us. It's like we're doing a mitzvah. She thought she's doing a mitzvah by helping out her brother. But you can't talk bad behind somebody's back. Doesn't matter if your intentions are good. That's what the Torah's level of refinement is trying to tell us. So what happens next? So Miriam's in this state. Moshe says, it's my turn now to pray for Miriam. It's my turn now to look after my sister, even though she's my older sister. And it says Moses prayed for Miriam. Look at the bottom line. No, sorry, it's not on the bottom line. It's next page, verse 13. So Moses cried out to God, please heal her, and demanding and asking God. And that's the shortest prayer in the Torah, and probably one of the most effective, because she was healed right away. So kel na, rafa na la. Those words are the prayer that you say, please God, heal her. Please God, listen to me. Please God, heal her. Kel na, rafa na la. And that's what Moshe said, and Miriam was cured. So obviously, no harm, no foul. Moshe and Miriam love each other, but the lesson was, and a very powerful lesson, is that even in righteous attempting to restore and repair relationships, be very careful not to slip up and say something negative about somebody when they're not present, not able to defend themselves. And Aaron, listening, not fully off the hook, because it says 3 people are affected by Lashon Hara: the person who said it, the person who heard it, the person who's being spoken about. Each get hurt in a different way. Obviously, the one who spoke is the one that gets the tsaras remedy. But this is a very timely reminder for us when it comes to other Jews who need to be improved upon because of their behavior. There's a lot of rules of how we're allowed to do it, and not saying anything negative about an individual. You can say without saying the person's name. You can say it also if it's public knowledge already, as long as nobody can figure out who you're trying to say it is. Yeah. Like so and so, not to mention any names. You gotta be careful with that. But also, if it's public knowledge already, if people know about it, it's not considered Lashon Hara either, because this is only a case where nobody else knew. Miriam didn't know. 3 people know already. It's already public knowledge. So it's rechilut, it's gossip, but it's not Lashon Hara. So then you can come to a way of saying, I'm going to see how we can help the situation. But it's a reminder to us also what our most powerful weapon is. This whole parsha is the speech of those who missed out on Korban Pesach, asking God, please, we want another chance. They could have stayed quiet. They spoke, changed everything. They got a second chance. Then I had the complainers, right? They crying out to Hashem, we want this, we want that. Really, it was just complaints, also using the mouth in the wrong way. And now Miriam, again, just with the words, said the thing to the wrong person at the wrong time. Is another lesson to us. There was once a story told about Daniel, the prophet, who lived in the time of the destruction after the first temple, and he was an advisor to the king. And in this situation, the king had a child who was very, very sick. And the doctors came and said, the only way that he can be cured is by drinking the milk of a lioness, female lion. How are we supposed to get that? How are we supposed to get the milk of a lion? All right, Daniel, I'm volunteering you. It's your job. You have 10 days to get this milk, or you're kaput. The child needs to have this cure. So Daniel says, okay, fine. 10 days, give me 10 goats, please. That's all I need, 10 goats. So give him 10 goats. The first day he goes to where the lions are, and he gets as close as he can, and he throws a goat over to the lion mauls the goat, eats the goat. Second day, brings the goat, comes a little bit closer. The lion realizes this is a good guy, gave me food yesterday. Comes again, brings a second goat, and the lion eats it. By the third day, he's getting really close to the lion, and he gives the goat, and by the 9th day, he's the lion's best friend. The lion thinks he's the best thing since goats were invented. And he basically says, you can come and touch me, pet me. And on the 10th day, he was friendly enough, and the lion trusted him enough to be able to actually milk the lioness without being mauled to death. And he comes back with this jar full of lion's milk. And it was late at night already, so he said, I'll go to the king on the 10th day in the morning. That night, he has a dream. And in his dream, all of his body parts are coming up to try and take credit for this amazing accomplishment of getting this milk. And the leg said, if it wasn't for my bravery, you would never have gotten the milk. I deserve all the credit. And the hand said, but it was me that actually squeezed the milk and got the milk. You got to give me the credit. And the eyes said, if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have seen where to go. And each one was saying how they deserved all the credit. And the tongue in his dream came out and said, I deserve all the credit. And they all turned to the tongue and said, you deserve the credit? You did nothing. You are the tongue, you did nothing. He says, yeah? You think I did nothing? All right. Wait and see what happens next. The next morning, Daniel comes with the goat's milk, with the lion's milk to the king and says, Your Majesty, it's been 10 days. I hope your child is still okay and well enough to be able to drink this milk that has come from a cow. And the king says, what? You make a fool out of me? 10 days? You go and lead me off on this goose chase while you come back with milk of a cow? And he doesn't know why he said that. And throw him into jail immediately. He's going to be hanged tomorrow, making a mockery out of me. Meantime, my son's dying. He's bringing me milk from a cow. Not even on the first day, on the 10th day. He had to put me through this whole thing. So he's in jail. And he finally falls into a restless sleep. And again, all the body parts come. And the tongue says, so, who's in charge now? Who deserves all the credit now? So the legs and the arms and the eyes and the ears, they all say, all right, tongue, you did this, you're right, you are the most powerful. Get us out of this mess. So the tongue says, now that you admit that I am the one most responsible for your success or your failures, I appreciate that. You'll always remember me for that. Now I'll go and get you out of this mess. And Daniel says to the chief executioner, can you just give me 1 minute with the king? Just one more minute, please. I'm a trusted servant. I'm a trusted minister. Please give him 1 more minute. And he says, that jar, it is the milk of a lioness. I was using metaphor. I was using a way of words to say it was so easy for me to get this milk of a lioness. It was as easy as if I got milk from a cow, but it just came out wrong. It just came out as if it was like milk from a cow, but really it was just an expression of the ease that it took me to get this milk. But it is milk from a lioness. Please believe me. Try it on your son and see if it works. Now he had to rely on the doctor's diagnosis to see if the prescription. Sure enough, give the milk of the lion, and it works. The kid is cured, he feels better, he gets better, he recovers. And ever since then, the lesson was that if there's one part of your body that has more power over any other part of your body, for better or for worse, to destroy or to build, it is the tongue. It is the words that we use. And if there's any portion that indicates that, it is this portion more than any other of how powerful the words can be. On that note, I wish you a wonderful evening. And may it be a blessed and beautiful night. And let's say good words.